Welcome back to the Time for Heroes podcast. Right, on the podcast today, I have Anton Pell. Anton is a music promoter among tons of other things he's done in his life, growing up between Aberdeen and Manchester. We're just going to go through his career, and it's pretty eventful to say. So we'll just get back to the start, your early life growing up and what it was like for a young Anton.
Well, back then, growing up in Scotland, it was pretty much a world away from where I am now in Manchester. So, getting into music in Scotland, it was quite a good scene, but more the house music, more techno, things like that in Scotland. But I'd always come down to Manchester where my mum lived and spend holidays with her. So I'd be going back with like albums from the Happy Mondays and stuff like that, which I get slated for initially, but I stuck with it, ended up getting a job DJing at 11 and kind of went from there.
Right. And obviously, growing up between Aberdeen and Manchester, obviously you touched on the music, but you were a football fan as well. You played football to some level. So what was your team?
My team I supported Aberdeen as a boy.
Right.
I
And
still do, obviously, and United, but Aberdeen, especially moving up to Aberdeen, say in 1980, it was impossible not to. My dad was trying to make me a Celtic fan because he's Irish, so he was pushing that onto me. I got me Celtic kits, but growing up in Aberdeen at that time when they dominated pretty much Europe and Scottish football anyway, it was impossible not to get swept up with that. So Aberdeen still is stand free.
right. And did you hear from your dad yesterday after the result?
Uh, what I've no. He lives in Australia. I don't hear from him that often. But no, not no. I did watch it though. I watched it myself. We were unlucky first half with a couple of mistakes,
Yeah.
and they killed it off at the end. So
It's funny that as well. I've got three cousins, three brothers, and two of them are Celtic fans, and the other one's an Aberdeen fan.
what are you, Celtic?
I'm Celtic, aye.
That's all
Aye,
right. Run over the others.
they grew up in Glasgow and they moved down to Nottingham. And when they went to school, obviously people were asking them what team they supported. So two of them had said Celtic, that's who they supported. Another one picked Aberdeen because he played the same colour as Nottingham Forest. And he supported them all his life since. Still, he stays in Glasgow and he goes up. He's a season ticket holder for Aberdeen. He's up every week.
Yeah, I've seen that a few times going away with Aberdeen on buses. I've gone up myself and gone away games, and there's people that have just picked the Scottish team at random, get involved with the banter and the ultra scene that Aberdeen have with the flags and things like that, and they just
Yeah.
travel everywhere with them. No connection to the city, just gone like that on a map, like them.
You touched on that. You were DJing at school. What sort of music was that? Was that kind of more the kind of rave music at that point?
Yeah, well, no, not really, because I mean, I started off with a set that included alternate and things like that, just to kind of stand me out a bit and to get me the job in the first place. But back then, it was more grunge in Scotland. It was more your Nirvanas were coming into it, Pearl Jam, Faith No More, all these sort of bands, and so there was a big grunge movement that kind of replaced that Manchester movement back then. So, and that didn't come back round again until I guess Oasis. But at the time, it was the grunge really. We had bands, so I'd start DJing, and then there was bands that were doing covers of Nirvana and things like that, and I'd put them on while I'm DJing, and it just natural progression. That was gig promotion. You didn't know it at the time, but I guess that's exactly what we do now. The same thing.
Yeah. And then kind of your family, your dad moved to London. Your dad got a job in London and kind of
Yeah,
you were down there for 6 months.
yeah,
Uh,
that's when it tits up.
yeah. So would you say that's when everything kind of changed? How did you feel kind of moving down there away from all your mates?
Yeah, pretty much it was really tough at the time because I'd got to a position where I was doing a lot. I was playing football, I was in the cadets, I was like a lance corporal in the cadets, captain of my football team, doing all these stuff. I had my subjects planned and it just came out the blue. So within 2 weeks, I was off down to London to with my dad, so it's only taken away from the family. I was too young to leave education because the Scottish school system is you do 4 years, you do your GCSEs in 4 years, your standard grades. In England, you do them in 5 years. So because moving up and down as a kid, I ended up being really young, just turned 15 when I'd done my standard grades. So I had to stay in education when my dad moved to London and put me in an art college in Farnham. Everyone was 18. I was a world away from the Scottish village I knew, all these English people. You'll know what I mean. I talk with a funny accent, and that's down south. So that's worse than like there's a north-south divide. Manchester in the north of England's cool, but anywhere south of that's not cool. But yeah, it was just tough, really tough, right? Culture shock. I tried to enjoy it, but the work was really hard that I was having to do, and I just missed everything. Just wanted to get home. That's all I wanted to do, get home.
Yeah, and your brother, was he back in Aberdeen still?
Yeah, he's still there. He still
Yeah.
lives out in countryside in Bankery.
Yeah, so you ended up you got back up to Aberdeen. How was that then, going back up there, kind of yourself and enrolling back in school and things like that? It seems quite a responsibility to kind of go back up there, but to go back to school.
That's just all I wanted to do. I just wanted to go back, and because you can do fifth year and sixth year in Scotland, so you can do like your equivalent hires. You can do them 2 years. So even if I missed fifth year, I thought that can always be my aim. Go back for sixth year and do them in sixth year. I wanted to do what I had planned: go to university with my friends in Edinburgh and do all this stuff that you have planned from the age of like 11, 12, and it was just all going wrong. But getting back to Scotland, it was like I felt I'd achieved something, but I was in a bad way, stopping off in Manchester along the way. There was bad guardians that were giving you prescription drugs and all this stuff. It was just awful. It was just
Yeah,
awful. I was where I wanted to be, but I wasn't who I wanted to be. And I had nobody around. But I still knew I was better, still knew what I wanted to do. But I didn't know the problems I carried with me. They were just things that you just happened, and then suddenly you've got all these problems that are built up in the background. You're into your prescription drugs, you're into all this other stuff that suddenly you can't get that in this little village. So that's when
yeah,
it becomes apparent that it was a problem then. But anyway, sorted myself out. I got back in school, but I was just struggling to keep attendances because I was working full time as well and things. A family took me in on a farm that I was paying them, I think, £30 a week to live there and stuff. I chopped wood for Mars bars and things like that. It was a different life, but I was happy then. But again, too young to looking back. I was a vulnerable kid. I was just turned 16. I didn't really have much direction. I was worth something, but just didn't know.
yeah.
Didn't really have an end in sight. It's tough.
It's funny, isn't it? But like, as I say, it's funny. It's not funny, but you seem to have, in one aspect, your head was screwed on. You had a plan, but at the same point, maybe in other aspects, your life was kind of falling apart in no direction. It's kind of,
That was influences, I guess, being easy led, doing things like that. The best mate Pete, who is in the book, and he was just nothing like where I was from. His mum was an alcoholic. His stepdad, ended up looking after him. And when we were 13, I remember going to his house and he's chopping up weed in the kitchen for all these drunks. And then one day he left a pile of towels at the top of the stairs. His stepdad, who took him on, fell over, died. And he's on his own from the age of 13, 14. And there wasn't
yeah,
much support for him, but his alcoholic mother, who dropped back into his life and gave him all these prescription drugs and things like that. And it was just so I'm quite lucky that I survived all that. He didn't, other people didn't, but I did.
yeah.
So
Obviously, you mentioned the family taking you in. Then at some point, you were working in a hotel as well. And there's a story about you doing the toilet next to Michael Portillo.
yeah,
Um, explain that in a wee bit more detail. And secondly, who is better dressed out of yourself and Portillo?
yeah. Well, it depends if you like blue rosettes. I personally don't. But that day, yeah, well, it was a five-star hotel called Bankery Lodge, and it was famous for having Tory parties come and stay. It had the River Dee run through it, which was exclusive salmon fishing river, that sort of thing. So it was a retreat hotel. But the family took me in, but they gave me a room off grid, so in the basement, so it wasn't on the fire plans and all things like that. It was behind a wine cellar. I'd have to walk under the basement through some corridors to get there, and so when the police came and did the sweep, like they do with people in their building, like politicians and stuff, they came to the sweep for bombs and everything. They didn't have the plans of my room, so I'd been out the night before. I think Euro '96 was on at the time, so I wake up. Yeah, it was because I dyed my hair blonde to look like Gaza, and it came out like bright ginger. And I remember just getting up in my cartoon boxer shorts, wobbling through the toilet, and there he was, stood next to me. There was amidst some scandal, I think, in his life at the time. So yeah, I got a bit of a fright. I knew the face because of something like that, and the blue rosette. And then someone said, "What's going on?" And somebody told me, "We've got have they not been to your room? They've kicked us all out." I'm like, "No." Just woke up. John Major was there. Everybody.
Wait, was he wearing those pink pastel coloured trousers or anything like that? You see one of these
No,
train
no,
journeys.
he was just in a suit, just in his normal suit. It was just me that I had my boxer shorts on. So, yeah, and stood next to him. So he looked a bit taken aback, like, "How the hell did you get in here?" I'm the same. I don't know what you're
Yeah,
doing in my toilet.
he's quite a stylish guy now. When you see him on the train
Yeah,
program, they're ideal on a Sunday. See with a hangover, sitting watching Portillo
no, I quite like
dancing
him.
about in trains.
Yeah, I always watch him. Easy watching, isn't it?
Yeah. Obviously, later on in the book, you're selling weed and all that from time to time, and then you kind of get in touch with some gang,
Yeah,
to the point where, according to the Scottish government, you're making millions of pounds.
yeah,
Obviously, we we know what they're like with their figures and kind of massaging figures to suit themselves. But how did all that come about? Uh,
just by being stupid again, vulnerable, easy led at that age, not making excuses because things that I did weren't right back then. But yeah, it was more business than anything. Like, let's make our student loans go a bit further, invest in something. Where can we get this amount from and pay for it? And to get that sort of amount, you've got to jump up the ladder a bit. And then you jump up the ladder, these people are getting made aware of you, and that's it. They see what you can do like that. They want more of it. They put the claws in, and then it's big drops here, do this, do that. Before you know it, I was getting kidnapped and forced into like big stuff, big rounds, and like pallets full, like daily. It was just awful
it,
time.
it's mental. I mean, I can mind. I mean, I think about the same age as you, maybe a year younger. I can mind. I was kind of the same. Just I bought a bit of weed here and there, and I can mind some guy giving me like a 9 bar and saying, "No, just sell that," and it freaked me out. Even just
Yeah.
having like a 9 bar, to the point where obviously that's where you started it, and then it got progressively worse. I mean, I couldn't even imagine picking up pallets and stuff like that. And at that age as well, it must have been so hard and so frightening. You don't know a way out.
Well, that was the worst thing about it. I never saw a future anymore. Like, it was like your future was taken away from you. You were forever indebted to people who didn't want to lose you or want you out of the picture. You constantly had that daily pressure of finding untouchable amounts of money, and just constant. When you look back, you see a lot of it was torture, a lot of it was people taking advantage of your vulnerability at that time. But when you are that age, you go with it. The terror does take over, and you do anything they'll say. You'll say anything to keep people happy. You know what I mean? And you things kick in that you didn't know you had, and you've just got to
Yeah,
power through it. But there was many times where I just went out in my car and drove, put my foot down, and thought, right, if I hit this corner and miss it, I'm okay with that. Do you know what I mean? And I'd
yeah,
make it home, and I go, right, I'm meant to be here. Let's go again. Let's see what we can do. But there was times when I did give up mentally and thought, right, this is it. I don't care anymore. I don't care. It'll
mm.
kill me.
So I mean, eventually your family stepped in and kind of took you took you away back down to Manchester at the equation, and then there was a court case in which
Yeah.
you kind of testified against him. How hard was that? Kind of again as
But
a young boy getting up and having to.
it's the stigma of what you're doing. That's the hardest thing. Do you know what I mean? Like the grass, or is he what was and things like that. But it got to the point where the I didn't see it like that. I thought when everything was relayed back to me, and there's a few police forces involved, and they tried terrorizing my family as well, like that. There's no choice then. Do you know what I mean? There's to protect others going forward, and just to try and move on from it. And the lies that were coming out and the terror that had been put on me, yeah, I wanted them to feel that back too. I wanted to look them in the eye and give them that back too, and get and make them feel as powerless as they made me feel for years. You know, the torture I went through every day, the beatings, the kidnappings, slicings of my fingers, things like that. Waking up in my bath, pools of blood wrapped in
Yeah, yeah. Well,
plastic.
that's just that. I mean, I know you're as much a victim as anybody else. You know, like you've been exploited as a young boy. You're not really able to know better at that age. And what
No,
once you do know better, you're kind of there seems no way out. So you're a victim in it as well.
yeah. Well, I see that now. I deal with it in a different way. I see that as somebody else. Like I deal with it in the third person and stuff like that, and things like that. But yeah, it never goes away. But I look back now and think I was a victim, but I was also involved. You know, and it's hard. I do carry a lot of guilt from that period. Uh,
Hmm.
More so for my family and people like that had to get involved. That was never something I wanted. It was just forced upon us that it had to happen that way. And so yeah, that was the hardest thing, actually, having to go to court, get through that barrier, because it took so long. It took a year or two for the to find this gang after they'd gone underground and things like that. So it was pretty tough that period. And then they came out saying, making up all these lies, and that's when I don't care anymore. I don't care anymore. I'm
Yeah.
giving it back.
At this point as well, you had a market still, which you were quite a Dell boy back then. Some of the stuff you were selling, to the point where you ended up getting raided, your house get raided, and they found all your knockoff gear and stuff like that. Around about the same time, your daughter was born, and obviously Pete, your pal that you mentioned, died.
Yeah,
Not long after that, which obviously that must have had an effect as well. Like looking back on that, do you, when Pete met your daughter, he was so happy for you, and then it was only a couple of days later that he
yeah.
died. So how did that affect you?
It was really tough because he just not long come back into my life, and Peter had a tough time. He kept going, and at that age, but he'd come over drug addiction. He had a partner who got really bad into heroin. He had a baby who died, so following that, he got into heroin, mourning his baby and stuff, and he was getting clean. He was getting clean, and I bumped into him just going. I was going to get a tattoo one day, and I just heard him singing an Aberdeen song across the road, singing "Stand Free" at me. So I was like, "That's what I'm going to get tattooed on my arm." And I've got it tattooed on my arm from that moment. But yeah, so it was tough for that reason. It was just things like that that are so quick and happen from the blue. They just don't expect them, so it takes a while to sink in. It took months for autopsies and things like that. I've got the baby, obviously, to think about at the time, the court case lingering over me and everything like that. And with Pete, the hardest thing was when it came to the funeral, and just how I remember how light he felt in the coffin, that sort of thing. You know, all of us carrying him, and I just what a tragic waste. All the people who'd let him down, all the guardians who'd come into his life, none of it was his fault. He had no choice. He didn't have a crossroads ever. He had one way, a left or a right each time, and they were
Hmm.
both bad choices. So like it's kind of an inspiration to me, because I have to if one of us is going to do something or go be better, it's on my shoulders now, so I
Yeah,
carried that. But the toughest thing was, yeah, you look out while you're speaking in the church, and you see all your friends just absolutely devastated over it, and still are to this day, a lot of them.
well, I mean that's what I was going to touch on. Do you feel now, obviously, that you're kind of living this life for both of you, which you said, yeah, that's kind of that's the reason why you move on and kind of
Yeah, definitely,
do what
because
you
he was
do.
he was the mate who got me into all that sort of music early days when I was a kid. Yeah, I know it got me into other stuff, but on the music side, yeah, I carry that responsibility. Yeah, we both can't fuck up. Do you know what I mean?
Mm. So obviously you had this court case looming over you. You ended up with a community order and ended up with proceeds of crime. Obviously, eventually ended up in the jail. You get 30 days in the jail.
Yeah.
First time you've ended up in jail, and you used that kind of market stall mentality to kind of keep yourself safe in the jail, selling sachets of sugar.
Well, it was spoons and cups of sugar. It wasn't
Right.
sachets. What I noticed, but as soon as I got in, I was baffled that they give you about 10 tea bags for the day, but about 2 sachets of sugar. So there was a shortfall there. So and people were putting strawberry jams in the teas to make them sweeter. So I thought, why has no one thought of this? So I had a bit of money in my pocket, only 60 quid, but you go into prison with 60 quid for a couple of weeks. It's a rich canteen. You know what I mean? So I bought mostly fags and sugar and sold sugar. I was getting murderers queue up for swapping me a matchstick for a cup of sugar. I was like, yep, no worries. And what I noticed quickly, if you go in there with nothing, you're picked on, you're traumatized, you're bullied, stuff like that. If you've got something, everyone wants to be your friend. So, yeah, milk it. I became the sugar baron for 2 weeks. I'm not proud of being there, but I've never been back since.
Yeah. And what prison was this?
Yeah, Forest Bank,
Right. And whereabouts is that? Is that local? Is that Manchester? Right.
Salford, yeah.
Right. Aye, so there'll be some wild guys in there.
Yeah, there was, and it was over full. I remember because I'd never been before, so I didn't know what I'd been like. Obviously, I'd locked up for a night when I was a kid, but I'd never been held in an actual prison. So going there, going through reception and everything, I noticed pretty quickly it was over full. They meant to have one person in a pad. They sometimes had two or three, and we were put in the isolation wing because the prison's just too full and overcrowded. We were only allowed out for an hour a day, and it was just yeah, the conditions were awful and stuff. But they could pretty much do what they wanted in there. There was still drugs, there was still this, that, the other kicking around. There was still people knocking on your cell, offering you things, saying they're getting a visit that day and stuff like that. So nothing much changes in there. You can carry on as normal. So I could see at that time people were going in normal and they come out addicted to drugs. You know what I mean? There's a
Yeah.
big market in there too. So I stuck to the sugar. I got out in 14 days for good behaviour, and that was it. I've not been back.
And at that time in the jail, what were you thinking? What was your plans for coming out?
Well, at the time, well, it was just more promising myself never to go back. Proceeds of crime, as you'll know, are quite tough because if you don't, they gave me a figure of about £50,000, and if you can be waiting for a gate arrest, it doesn't clear it going doing time, and you still owe that money. So I was nervous about just getting picked up again and thrown back in over and over, going, I'm never going to be able to raise this money now. So I got it down to about 11,000. Uh, cat and mouse chase went on for ages, and eventually I was able to sort it out and see a future. But still, I still was just working for the family at the time, just building work, and just doing
Mhm.
side things on the side. I knew I was going to do something, just didn't know what. Still hadn't done music yet. Again,
Yeah. And this is kind of obviously you went to Oasis at Heaton Park.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what was that sort of the last gigs in Britain? Was that right?
Yeah, that was it was a couple of weeks before they did the one that they split up. Was it Barcelona? They split up, I think, was
Paris
it?
was it? I think it was Paris.
Yeah, so it was on that tour, so a few weeks before. It was just a bit sad. I remember being really sad at the end. People were trudging away. It was wet. It was a dismal day. And they churned out the festival hits like they do. They've not been throwing out any new music or anything like that. And you just walked away and you were just on reflection, thinking back to the first time you seen them. And it was like 15 years before, things like that, 13, 14 years before. So you knew it was the end, and it was also like the end of your childhood, really. Overspilled, it says that, overspilled into being an adult. because that's what they say. I also put that in the book. If you were 15 when Oasis came out, you possibly had the best childhood musically. You had the best of everything, from the house music bursting on the mainstream, the underground scenes, all that. You had the grunge, you had the Manchester revival with Oasis and stuff. So yeah, it was a good time, but it was just sad to know that it was coming to the end. You just knew it was coming to the end. Nothing lasts forever, does it?
I think they were Oasis weren't able to, like, everything kind of changed early 2000s, didn't it? And they weren't. I don't think Oasis fit in with the rest of the bands at that period, and that's kind of how it kind of dragged on the 6, 7 years. Really, they weren't. It didn't suit them, didn't it? No, or
Yeah, no,
the scene they were in.
it was quite. They did really well to burst through it, and obviously, again, thanks to McGee and stuff taking a punt on them and working those raw records to be something. They had good marketing, they had good colours, and it was just simple. It was cool. They knew how to pick up a line in the press and get some coverage and stuff. They had the full package. They were good looking, good clobber, would chuck tellies out the window, shag
Yeah,
famous people, that sort of thing. You've got all that, and you're a rock star, and everybody wants a piece of you. And they just had the full package. But it was just more an era than like a band. It was more a movement than about that band. They kicked on a lot of other stuff, your Cats and all these other bands that came out on the back of it, and so they grew that scene again. And it was that era. It was that pre-internet era that was special to be a part
yeah.
of.
Well, that's it. I mean, you look at the lineup for Loch Lomond and Nebworth. You look at the bands they had on with them. It's
Yeah,
That's
I
like
know.
better than any festival you could ever imagine.
I know. I seen them at Glasgow Green as well, and they had Primal Scream on. Foo Fighters. They were just pretty new to the UK. Asian Dub Foundation, some others. And that was really good. But Primal Scream blew
Mhm.
everyone away there.
Well, that's
Carney
it.
was on.
And obviously, like you mentioned, Foo Fighters. I mean, that must be where Liam's still got that friendship with Dave Grohl even
Yeah,
now.
he
So
loves him.
that's where
Rock
that
and roll
came from.
star. Yeah,
Another band came out, the Cortinas, with another Liam kind of fronting them. As you mentioned in the book, obviously the first two albums were brilliant. You kind of fell away from them, but they kind of kicked off. If it wasn't for them finding them and going to this festival at Naya Napa, kind of turned your life around in some
yeah.
aspects.
Yeah, I guess I've never looked at it like that, but yeah, thanks to the Cortinas, pretty much, yeah. At that time, when they were gigging around Manchester around 2007, 8, the Acrylic it became a big underground song, What Took You So Long and stuff like that. So they were
Uh-huh.
getting really, they were punky, they were energetic shows, they were really good. And so you thought, yeah, this is it. Because BDI had come out at the time and everyone was clinging on to the Oasis vibe, wanting BDI, but they flopped. And they flopped big time. It just wasn't the same. It was Oasis without Noel, and it just didn't do it. But yeah, they were really good. I watched them live back then at the Empress Ballroom, Fibbers in York, and they were just electric shows. Really good songs that were written in a poetic style, but they were written off the cuff. They were written put together in a band. When they get developed, they have to then commit to studio time. They've signed album deals, so then they're forced to do an album by a deadline. They've got to go into the studio, craft it from scratch. We always find the best music is usually the first one or two albums where they've
Yeah,
had them songs and they've gone in and laid them down, throw them down, and made them better. It's easy to take something and make it better. So you see that's what they were doing then. He was putting his own musicians to it, and it was just really good. So yeah, I went to Iron Appa to watch them, and then met a promoter over there and got the bug again.
yeah. So obviously the following year, you started your own promotions, Mancunia Promotions, associated with quite a few bands, obviously mentioned in the book: Modern Faces, Slow Readers Club, Sly Diggs. I had Dean Fairhurst on a few episodes back, and it's funny because I don't know how I found you. I found you through Facebook. I didn't realise the connection with Sly Diggs. So it was nice reading the book the last couple of days and realising how much a connection there is there. Obviously, these bands then you were fans. You were a fan first and foremost of these bands, and that's why you put them on your gigs. How was it starting out as a promoter? Was it daunting, kind of getting into something like that?
Sort of. Well, no, not really, because I had that experience from doing it for years as a kid, from everything from raves to putting on gigs. So I knew how to do it, and I knew how. And social media is obviously a different marketing tool than what we had back then. So it wasn't daunting. I was just a bit naive in the fact that I thought if I put on a gig, the gig capacity is 300 tickets, 300 times a tenner, that's 3 grand. That's what you thought your budget is. It's just things like that, little things you learn as you're going on. So then you realise, and now you learn to work out gig budgets, half it again, and then hopefully you work to that and that sort of thing. So it just things. And then if so, I spent a lot of money on them. They didn't really make any money, but we had great lineups. There were busy gigs and things like that. But yeah, I was a bit naive early days then, and then I thought, shall I do it again? And it was just Modern Faces really that got me really. I dig this band. I thought they were so cool. They were going to be big. It's a shame nothing much came from them years later, but a lot of the others did. We went on a co-headline tour. I took them on with Slow Readers Club, so you can see the ones that were really dedicated, stuck to it. They're still there. They're playing stadiums now. Even Dean Fairhurst, I had them on a couple of weeks ago at the club in Wigan, and they've gone on. They were playing St Helens Stadium a week later. So it's good to see that from these early meetings when they're just kids starting out to 10 years later, they're doing these amazing stuff. It's brilliant just to be a little piece of the jigsaw in their journey.
Mm-hmm. I can vaguely mind Modern Faces. I think around about the same time, I put on a, a couple of gigs in Wishaw where I stay, and I think I tried to get Strawberry Ocean Sea, which was there was a band, the Apple Scruffs, and another band, High Five Alive, both from Glasgow, and they kind of merged together, and made this band, Strawberry Ocean Sea. I think I had them, but Modern Faces was one of the bands I was looking at around about that time. But as I say, I put on two gigs, like a month apart, and the stress that caused me, I was like, I'm not doing that again. So for you to kind of push you on through and organising gigs up and down the country, Sheffield, Hull, Leeds, all these places, it probably the same age as me, man. I take my hat after you. It's
Well,
um,
I thought that's what you did. I thought, like, yeah, if I'm going to promote this and be a tour manager, then I'm got to be the one picking these venues, picking the supports, doing everything. I know it's a bit different now. If you're a band manager or a tour manager, you reach out to promoters in different towns. Like me, I just thought I had to do it all. So I'd be going like I'd be booking the venue, booking all the bands, doing
uh-huh.
the whole tours. And but yeah, I liked it. I did like it that way. We had some good stories. And Modern Faces they were always bummed out by the Scottish music industry. They felt neglected in a big way by then because they were getting picked up on a lot of press in England. They were getting big supports in England, but not once did T in the Park offer them a gig. And they were desperate to play T in the Park, so much so that they sent the music and a false identity and got selected. They thought that they had an agenda against them, that it was them, their look, the style, and all that they just didn't pick them on, even though if they did give them that back in it, they would have kicked on because they were getting big supports, big shows, and everywhere I took them in England, they had a big crowd there and groupies waiting for them, everything at the gates. You didn't get that really on the unsigned scene. People waiting at the stage door for them, but you did
Yeah.
with these.
Obviously, at that time, 2012, your son was born. Your son was born the weekend of the Roses gigs at Heaton Park, so you missed out on that. I was down there for when was I there? Was it the Sunday night? I think it was.
Yeah.
And like you touched on BDI, obviously BDI support it. What did you said the flop? What did you think of the two albums? Because I thought the second album was really good.
I didn't really give much time for them both. I like the second album. The first one was just churned out there. It was just Liam trying to fill the gap. Second album was all right, but I'd given up on them by then. I thought it wasn't going to work and stuff like that. I admire Liam for what he's done since, like the character he's had. Or to pull it back when you watch the films that he's been in the documentaries, he is a bit of a gentle soul underneath, and he's probably the nicer of the two brothers in my experience. And it was inspirational to see him go through that bad period, come back and get a number one, walk out of Glastonbury at lunchtime to the biggest crowd there and things like that. It was those are things that I buzz off. Right? People achieving or coming back from something that I find amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, after BDI, he was kind of, you thought that was it. You thought he was kind of dead and gone, really. That was that. And he kind of pull it back for there. It was amazing. I mean, I went to see him one of his first gigs back at the Barrowlands, and I took my pals into the dance music, and I took my pal, and he said it's the best gig of his life.
Yeah, I seen him in Aberdeen on that same tour. I think around 2017, I think 2016, 17, and it was really good, really good. And it was just good to see that it wasn't just a generational thing like you see with a lot of older acts coming back. There was kids there. It was still rock and roll. It was still cool. It wasn't people just going because the mums and dads liked them of that age group. They were going because they liked the music.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen them twice now at the Hydro as well, and you see all these young kids, and a lot of the young kids, they're not even interested in Oasis songs. They're buzzing off like Liam's solo stuff. It's funny when you look around, you see a crowd of guys like their age, and they're just buzzing for these Oasis tunes, and then you look to the other end, and you've got kids that aren't interested; they want the new stuff.
Yeah, and that's what's good. That's what I mean.
Then 2013, you got a residency in a place, Dry Live, where you were able to put on monthly gigs. At this point, you were doing the Sally Diggs tour as well. You did a festival. You were doing the half-time plays at Man United. And as well as that, you started on a radio station, an online radio station. So that's some year, that like 2013, so much stuff going on, so much new stuff.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
How do you kind of juggle that? Obviously, with having a young kid there as well. How do you manage?
At that time, I was working full time for the family building firm as well, so that was like my getaways, the music. So it wasn't fair on the wife at the time, looking back, because I just spent every minute as soon as I got home from work, straight in the garage where they had an office, and just everything. Twitter was the one back then that connected you with a lot of things. Twitter was huge for that. I didn't find it that I like doing stuff, I like being busy, I like being active and doing stuff. So I didn't find I was taking on too much. Sometimes you would, or you'd feel the guilt if something went wrong, or you spread yourself too thin. And that can always be the case. You do learn to delegate a lot as you go older. But back then, it was all right. The radio shows, they got me a lot of stuff. Man United got me a lot of stuff. It got me to the point of that period. I remember the Sherlocks, who are now heading for a number one or top five this year. They came to my house then, posting CDs, knocking on my door with like their Live for the Moments. The years before it was even released on an album, they're like 15, 16-year-old kids. So it got you all these bands wanting to kind of turn that corner from me, from having to research, look, constantly seeking out new acts, to them starting to come to me more and more because of the United work. People want to play at United. I was getting sent lots of stuff. So it became easy. It became just listening to the music, listening to what I like, listening to what I thought others would like, rather than me seeking out it all the time, seeking these acts out. They started coming to me more. So within a year, I got busier, but the job got easier, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It seems to be a thing nowadays, obviously, like Man City, I've got their stuff at the day where I've seen bands, the Rosa Docs, stuff like that. I've done stuff for Man City. I had a wee boy on one of my other podcasts, Ryan Jarvis. He does quite
I know Ryan well. He rehearses at one of my studios now and again.
Right, he's a good wee boy as well. Obviously, you kind of Jamie Webster doing a lot of stuff with Liverpool, and then there's a wee boy down south, Louis Dunsford.
Yeah, I know. Just the everything. Louis good. I like
Yeah.
Louis. He's one of my favourite acts from down south.
So it is kind of nice to see kind of we're getting a kind of connection back with the football and music, and it seems to be the football teams that are trying to kind of reach out to these acts.
Well, they did it with us at the time. The United script was the City were doing a lot of it. They built a stage and they were letting bands play outside the ground, so
Uh-huh.
it was their way of doing something to counter that. So my job was just to provide one song every half time, one song from a new band in Manchester. But that's when there's a captive audience there. The stadium's full at half time, so it was a good. It did me really well, and we got a lot of good bands, a good exposure because of it.
Well, this is the thing as well. In Manchester, there's like Manchester and the surrounding areas. There's so much talent coming up constantly. A lot of the bands I've had on recently, or I'm trying to get on, are Manchester-based bands. You get the Rosellas, you get Roller, you get the K's. There's so
Yeah.
much Red Drum Club, all these bands running about the area.
Yeah, Wigan's
Um,
the same as well. I run a club in Wigan at the minute, and that's the same. That's full of bands, Lathams, lottery winners, Stanleys who are doing really well, big at the minute. But yeah,
yeah, there's so much. You couldn't. You'd be sitting all day trying to list them because there is so much of them going on. And
yeah,
obviously, when we touch on it quite a bit in the podcast as well, obviously, this feeling seems to be putting on a lot of them. They seem to be focused on the bands up north more than down south. So
yeah. They've
I
become a bit more commercial. This feeling is a thing. They're more. They get them reps, so they've got a name, so now they can put a rep in each town,
uh
and and then they got a mailing list, bands from that area. They can separate them to a region, make sure they sell a certain amount of tickets to play the gig and stuff like that. And yeah, fair play if they can do that. What I think they do well is when bands do stand out for them, they can get a good kick up. You know, they'll go up to the Isle of Wight and stuff like that. But it's a long road doing going down that path. It's a long road for bands, and you won't earn much from it. But if you stick to it, you'll do all right with it. Catfish in the Bottle, man, they were the same. Bands like that who just Sherlock's even now. You know, look at my book. That was 10 years ago when they were dropping CDs through my door. So it's not just happened for them. Like people think, oh, they've been going since 2018,
yeah.
2017. No, they're not. They've been going a lot longer. They all have.
Yeah, it's a long journey, isn't it? 2014, what was the story with Viola Beach? How did you meet them? Or did
It was through a production company called Sugar House. I was doing putting a lot of their new bands on there from Chorley I think. Yeah, Chorley and they're really good with new music and a producer. So he'd send me bands along my way for gigs when he had a new band or a new tip. So and these were really desperate for a Manchester gig. They were doing all right in Warrington. I hadn't heard much of them, but they were promising big numbers and things like that. And so that was it. We just started talking. We got arranged the gig, the first headline show in Manchester, and we put them on. And I was really impressed with how good they were. They were just nice kids, really polite,
Mhm.
thankful kids. They didn't pack the place out, which they'd promised, but they were just dead. They were. I just remember them being really thankful at the end and being dead nice to me. So it was quite shocking what happened to them, and that ripped a big hole in our industry at the time. Just not for the ones that knew them or had some acquaintance with them, just because of how it could happen to anyone and what a tragic loss and things like that. And it just the music would have got there anyway. They were well on the way. Do you know what? They
Yeah,
were well on the way. So it's quite a shame that posthumously people will give them that tag posthumous number, and they think that's because that's the reason why. But they would have got there anyway.
yeah, they were super talented, and that there was a band up here running. I'm pretty sure it was running about the same time. The Lapels, they were Free School Bride, and the lead singer jumped in the Clyde. I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of it, whether it was suicide or whether it was an accident, but it was run about the same time, and they were kind of the same style as Viola Beach. I kind
Yeah.
of seen them as the Scottish version of them, and it destroyed them to an extent. The band all split up after it, and they knew. I think all of them are working with with different bands within the music industry to quite a good level. I think one of them's like back in Joseph's band. I think one of them's in Declan Welsh. They're all doing really well, but it was the same sort of thing, and it kind of ripped a hole in that music scene at the time.
It did, but it also gave everyone a big togetherness. It did, it really did, and
Mm.
even the wider industry took note from Coldplay covering them at Glastonbury and that sort of thing. It was just there were just special moments that followed for them. They do a festival now around here. That his dad does, my lad's dad does, and that helps out. Then it's for charity and stuff. So they're still going the river festival. I think it's called River Fest.
Right.
Yeah.
2015, your daughter was born, so that's your three kids now. Modern Faces split. You done the Black Grape gig up in Aberdeen,
Yeah.
and also that year you became co-owner of the live room.
Yeah.
So firstly, what was it like setting up the Black Grape stuff, and how easy or how hard was it dealing with John Ryder and Kermit?
It was Sean Ryder's a breeze. I've done stuff with Sean over the time. Sean's pretty easy. It's just that you get surprised by his rider sometimes when he's meant to be teetotal, but that just means he doesn't do drugs anymore. But I still have a Guinness and a Jameson's. Um, so that was it was Kermit was sound. It was just on that gig. I did it with a promoter called Alan came about and he knew I was from Aberdeen and said he's from Shetland. He said, I'll do Shetland, you do Aberdeen and we'll come together on this. But the Shetland gig got cancelled on the Friday, so we were flying on the Saturday. So we were flying them to Shetland on the Saturday, and then doing the gig in Aberdeen on the Sunday. So that was the hardest thing. Once I was on my way to the airport to send them off from Aberdeen to Shetland, when we got told that one flight's been cancelled. So that meant we had to cancel the show. That meant the band are stuck in Aberdeen. And that was the hardest thing. Then the tour managers do whatever you can to keep them, keep them in Aberdeen. So that meant dodgy envelopes and all sorts to Kermit and the lads just to keep them there. But since I seen them at a party about a year or two after that, we became friends since, and they introduced me as the best promoter we've ever met. We did a gig in Aberdeen and we were lost, we were stuck, and he walked in with envelopes of goodies for us. Like sometimes you've got to go above and beyond. Yeah, he did the job. They stayed, and we did a good gig. It was just really stressful because at that level, it was a big step up for me to do like more or less a mainstream gig, and it was the comeback tour. So
Hmm.
it was the cost. There was some cost that I didn't even counter in last minute, and it made a little bit of profit, but barely anything. Like you talk, spending £25,000 and making 26,000 back. That sort of show, and finding the money to do that and stuff. So that was really stressful. But yeah, it was. I'm glad I did it. It was a good show for everyone else.
And how did the live room come about? How did all that begin?
It was because I was moved up to Scotland and I was still doing the odd gig in Manchester. So just looking for new venues. This venue opened and they were looking for people to come in and do live stuff, get it open earlier because it was a nightclub. So I put some shows in. I remember Alias Kid was the first one, and that sold out within a day or two. So then this took notice of me, the owners of the property or the people who were running it at the time. I didn't know too much about the place. Um, and then the next two sold out, so they asked me to come on board, and or do I want to buy one of the partners out? And me being an idiot, yeah, go on then, I'll see what I can do. But yeah, and yeah, so I went for that. I ended up like trying to raise the money to go buy half of the business. Did do, and but there was more to running a club than meets my heart. Definitely ruined my head with that decision because I was doing it. Yeah, I wanted to come back to Manchester. I wasn't liking it up much up in Scotland anymore. I didn't. I'd gone up there to be a sensible parent, get a job in a building site, earn some money, have a normal job, but I was miserable doing that. I didn't become like that. I was working 12 hours a day. So then your kids are still in bed when you go to work. They're in bed when you get home. So you're working for what? Just to work. So I wanted it and went for it. But I learned a lot from doing that.
Yeah. Um, the following year, you did you brought back the festival, which we never really touched on. Obviously, One Day, One Love Festival. The first time you did it, You ended up getting shafted, didn't you? Um, the, the venue let in everybody for nothing so that they get
So that
the
they could get the bad take. I can see that now looking back whenever I'm venues and stuff like that. That was actually before I had the club, but yeah, I can see why they do that now. But as me as a promoter, I needed that money because I've got bands to pay and stuff like that. I needed people paying on the door, and they're seeing everybody outside partying and stuff because I'd had the first part of the festival outside as free. The indoor at night was ticketed. They just opened the doors and let everybody in. That and just went against my wishes really. So I ended up leaving before the headline. I was like, I suck this. Just
so
went home.
so
Let
I
everyone
see.
have a good night.
So you brought this one back then, and your venue, and you mentioned in the book that one of the highlights of that festival was the Scottish band Wolves.
Yeah, yeah. Why do you know
Um,
them?
is this they were from Dunfermline, weren't they?
Yeah, yeah. The Wolf
Did,
Pack.
did they have at this point? Did they have the two twins in the band?
Yeah, yeah. They're still
Yeah,
going. I'm friends with all of them guys.
yeah.
They were just bonkers because they turned up. They didn't turn up late. They turned up before any Manchester band, and they drove down from Dunfermline. So they were there bright and early before sound check, and they were all half cocked by the time they got there. Anyway, so they just made the atmosphere just dead lively and happy, and just got getting everyone else on it with them and stuff. And
Yeah,
the set was really good, but they were just lively. There was just a great laugh, and they just got everyone buzzing along with them and boosted that atmosphere in the venue that day. I think the Blinders were on that day as well. Were their
yeah.
first.
Another really good band. I can mind seeing Wolves supporting Kyle Faulkner in a wee pub in Paisley, and obviously the two twins stood out. They were getting everybody was shouting abuse at them, saying that they looked like Ed Sheeran, um, and then
Reclaiming.
they were wild, man. They two were wild, and seeing them now what they're doing with their new band Twinstown, man, they're what a carry on there, man, what a bunch of boys there. Grandmaster Flash as well.
Yeah.
Ended up trying to sue you. Is this? I'm pretty sure I've seen these gigs up and down the country. Did they do one up in Glasgow?
Yeah, I think on that tour they do. They come over every summer. Well, it's the Furious Five.
Uh-huh.
Not sure. Yeah, and they come over every summer and do the touring. Which I didn't know at the time. I didn't really know much about them. It was before my scene, not my thing. But as a business level, it is. Once you look into something like that, I think you can make it work. Initially, they were looking for a bigger venue, but the Grandmaster Flash came about suing us for using the term Grandmaster in reference to Melly Mel. So, like, well, you can't sue the chess champion of the world and stuff like that, can you? It was just all games, and it. I don't know now, even to this day, whether it was just something that they do that they collaborate on, a lot of them, and just make a bit of extra cash, and they don't have to do any gigs when they can just sue people for putting an advert out there. There's a lot of that goes on in the industry currently with bands like an old punk band are getting a lot of that at the minute called Slaughter and the Dogs. They have that. They can't even play their own name anymore. The guy who wrote the song and stuff. But with Grandmaster Flash, it was a mediator coming in. So I just got that impression at that time that they just fired mail shots to people who use this name, hopeful if they send over 100 emails, one might pay them. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
with me, there's no chance. We're asking for 50 grand to use the name. I was like, you'd be lucky. So no way.
And did they try this with the other promoters up and down the country as well?
Well, they did, yeah. They because everybody was. I'd organised like 18 dates of a tour for them. So all these other promoters, Stumpy up in Glasgow and people like that, they
Uh-huh.
were all. Do you know Stumpy?
Stumpy Hanry?
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
he was one of them. So he's there all flapping about. I'm like, don't worry, don't worry about it. So I just started replying to their emails and saying every email you send me, I'll charge you. It counts you £1,000, that sort of thing. So every time they do, there's no need for that. Just pays the money. That's £2,000 you owe me. And eventually, I told everyone to do that, but all promoters did cancel and pulled out of the gig because of it. But now, today, even today, I'm friends with Scorpio on Facebook. Elliot Ness, he's called. Elliot, he's called. But I'm friends with him on Facebook, and I see him putting his gigs up from this weekend, and he's there with Grandmaster Flash, all touring again now. So I think, was it a big fiddle all along? Was it a big fucking fiddle? Because we're meant to be rivals and not getting on anymore. That was the whole point. So when Furious 5 were touring without him, Grandmaster Flash was suing all the people at Furious 5 were touring. In hindsight, I think, were they just on the fiddle, all of them? Anyway, the tour went ahead. But one of my funniest moments from that time was when I booked the gig, and they've got that song, one of the bands, Sugar Hill Gang and Furious 5 it was, they got that song Hotel Motel Holiday Inn, that one. Mm-hmm. So I booked them in the Palace, and they had one more guest coming along, and so I needed another room, but the Palace didn't have any rooms. So then I saw the bright lights of the Holiday Inn across the road. I thought, this is genius. This is absolutely genius. They're definitely going to like this idea. So I went over and I said, you'll never guess who I've got in Manchester right now. The actual guys who sang the Holiday Inn song. And they're like, fuck off. I'm like, I actually do. And they didn't believe me. I said, all I want is one room, and I'll get them to come in and do a little advert for you and stuff like that, just for 1 or 2 rooms. And they just didn't believe me and fobbed me off. I thought it was absolute genius. I walked away absolutely dejected. Had to pay over the odds for a room somewhere else. But what, they missed a big trick there. Do you know what I mean? They'd still be using this to this day if they had them doing some dances.
Yeah, that would have been ideal for them.
Yeah.
There was a... What was the story with Paul Young and Sean Ryder, and how did that come about? And, I mean, it seems like the most unlikely pairing.
I know, yeah. There's been a few unlikely pairings like that come along, like me and Eddie Kidd. But with Paul Young and Sean Ryder, that was for a TV show called Rock Tales. Now, this was Paul Young's idea. He was piloting the show called Paul Young, but I knew the producer, Heather, from London, and she was a good friend of ours through a band called the Wenatchee Tribe and Alias Kid. And so it was through the Wenatchee Tribe, really, that they said, Anton, we've got this Heather, the producer, wants to talk to you about Paul Young. I'm like, what? The Paul Young? Like 80s Paul Young? And they're like, yes, I remember being in the school waiting for my kids to pick them up when I'm talking to Ant from Wenatchee Tribe about it. I'm like, no, wait, 80s Paul Young? I used to love him. My mum was a big fan. He said he's just got this idea for a show called Rock Tales with a celebrity chef called Barry Vera. We'll come up to Manchester. They need to use your club. We get celebrities in. We get them drunk. They tell the maddest tales. It's a simple format, but the drink was the big part of it, where they get loose lips and stuff. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that day when I agreed it, organised it, arranged it all, and Paul Young came in first. So I'm setting Paul Young up in the back room, setting the cameras up and things, and Sean came in then late, and Sean was like, it was just mad moment, and shaking his head. It's amazing, isn't it? 2 of us, we were chalk and cheese in the 80s, and here we are. It's just amazing. We've never ever met. But it was dead funny. I remember it ended up being like me, a few from Wenatchee Tribe, one lad from Alias Kid, and Paul Young sat in my office till dead late, doing a big lock-in and stuff, where Paul Young told me all sorts of funny stories. Gino DeCampo robbing his house and doing like that. It was just mad to have them together, and having Bez and Sean on that particular show. But they came, did the job, left, and it was Paul Young, and like stayed partying with all the Manchester lot till the early hours. So it was a bit of a turn up.
And round about this time as well, there's he brought back Finlay Quay as well.
Yeah,
that's a really nice story in the book. Obviously, when he came on stage and he went off again, obviously suffering from a lot of anxiety and stuff like that. It was a really nice tale about how you kind of got him to finish the show. And
yeah, with Finlay, it's with Finlay, a lot of people, he gets a lot of bad press because, I'll give you examples. He couldn't play one night. That viral video went out of him, and the promoter cancelled the show, thought he was taking the mick. But as a friend, he does have mental issues. He suffers from stage fright, anxiety, things like that. Is he good enough? Do you know? And and stuff like that. So he's not taking the mick there. He's not got he's trying to get himself in the position. Getting him out in that position on stage was hard enough in the first place. You know what I mean? So fair play that he's kind of he stayed with me a couple of weeks ago. Actually, slipped up to my couch here a couple of weeks ago. He'll turn up on the mega bus now and again, say, "Anton, you up?" And then he'll just stay and he'll go off on his travels. But fair play to him. Recently, he'd not had a drink. He didn't have a drink that night. He didn't have a smoke or anything like that. He was clean and he was going off walking up the hills for a couple of weeks. So that was good. And that was the thing at the time. He got shafted by the industry when he was really young. So he finds it really hard to trust people going forward. And that was his issue. And that particular gig, the crowd stayed with him. They could see that he was suffering. I would go into the green room and his whole family was saying, "Come on, Finlay, you can do it." And he's coming up with different excuses why it wasn't working. His guitar wasn't working. Things like that, but it was, and he kept coming back out. It took about 3 hours, but he came out and did it, and he finished his set. And afterwards, "I'll come back with my band." And I'm like, "You're okay." But I'm joking if you're listening, Finn. But he was all right. But yeah, I admired him for that, and he's come through a lot of bad stuff. Finlay, he's overcome a lot of bad stuff. He's no angel, don't get me wrong, but he's come through a lot.
But that's as you said, the industry can be so tough with these boys, and that a lot of them are starting out really young and they don't know what they're doing, and they've been taken advantage of. And this is where all the mental health issues come into play.
Yeah,
it's only as you kind of grow up and you realise you've maybe not lived a normal life, you've been taken advantage of, and it's really hard. Obviously, for you then in 2017, that was a tough year. Obviously, the issues with the live room.
Yeah.
You had all that going on. Both your grandparents died that year as well, and you had the Manchester bombing. So, how do you deal with a year like that? How do you pick yourself up after all that?
To be honest, other people do. Sometimes you've got to give yourself a kick up the arse. With me personally, came out of the club and I thought that was it for me with music. I was going to like that. That's it. But I was gutted about that. Like I say, you're only as good as the last thing you do, and if you fuck that up, you're a fuck up. You know what I mean? So get out there and fix it. Repair situations as best as you can. I'll kick on, and it was I had I had security bills, and all sorts to pay off, so I had to get a normal job. I had to just do deals in place for certain things, pay weekly bills to security firms I had, and just all this mad stuff that just knuckle down and do it. And after about a year, not even a year, about 7 or 8 months, it was Wenatchee Tribe actually were ringing me up at Christmas time. So like, "Where are you? We miss you. Come back, be our manager, release our music, take us on tour again," and stuff like that. So, and I was like, "Right, really? You want me?" And I was like, "Yeah, we all want you. We all miss you and stuff." So I was like, so then, I got a bit of a boost from that and felt good about it and reactivated all my socials and was like, "Hello world, I'm back." And that was it. I sorted out all my problems within a few months and I was ready. I thought, "I'm not ready to give this up yet. This is no." So went for it again.
Yeah. To the point you brought Mancunia, is it Mancunia Marley Records? And
Marley Mancunia, with Fat Neck, Al Power.
Then the TV as well.
Yeah, MMTV. And that
Yeah.
was with Fat Neck. We've gone on to do that. We still do that now. It's called Mancunia TV now. I started initially with Carl Power, in fact, the prankster. We went on the pitch with United and Bayern Munich that time.
Right.
He was my, that was it. Do you know what I mean? He invaded it. That was my business partner. He was Marley, I was Mancunia, and we came together as Marley Mancunia. And so that show, he knows a lot of celebrities, a lot of famous people. So that was his side, a lot of boxers, and I got the bands together and stuff. He ended up going through a rough patch, and I went out on my own after that. So he's not involved anymore, but that's why it's Mancunia, not Marley Mancunia anymore.
Oh, I had because you done some spoken word and stuff on that as well. I had Leon the pig farmer on a few episodes back as well. I think he done some stuff with Mancunia TV.
Yeah, Jack. Yeah, he was my resident poet, so I got him involved. Just so because it used to be me just finding all these people, so having someone who's good, known on the circuit that can see the best talent out there and get them along as well. So that was his role. He'd talk and get somebody, a poet from the area in.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Around about this time as well, obviously that's like 2018, then COVID kind of appears. So how did that affect your work as promoter and stuff like that?
Um, it's quite hit and miss this one because what was the social aspect was the hardest thing for people in our community. If that's what you're used to every week, going to shows and going out and seeing people, and a lot of people in the music industry do go to these gigs. They've not got a lot of them are single, a lot of them don't have, and that's what it's about. It's a community aspect going to shows. So that was the hardest thing about it. But we didn't really suffer too much because we quickly came up with a way to try and do the show and carry on doing live shows. So we created an unlocked version of the show, and we did that every week, so we could still provide the music interviews. Just mad looking back. We built screens where we could do interviews from either side of the screen, and how stupid we were to do that, but we kept on and did it. And the hardest thing was the constant change of restrictions. So you couldn't plan, even if you were told like we'll be out of and these restrictions by so you normally you'd plan a gig for them, but you just didn't know. So doing
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, when we did eventually come out and we were able to do a couple of festivals, they sold out pretty quickly, and it was just a good moment uh, to come back. But what annoyed me at that period was all the funding that was in place for other people, all the support schemes. Music got absolutely nothing. They took ages for the Arts Council to release some programs to help the industry. The Arts Council's website's awful. It's notoriously terrible. It's like a portal from 1980.
Mm-hmm.
It's that bad. And they don't give you any feedback. If you make an admin error, you're out. Do you know what I mean? Stuff like that. They make it really hard, and you hear all these groups, the Theatre Exchange Group and Royal something, getting millions and millions of pounds. And we are the grassroots. We're the foundations of the industry. What we do, and without that, everything does come crashing down. So for us to struggle so much to get funding and be on our toes to keep going all that time, that was the hardest thing. It was constantly trying to get funding, constantly trying to get sponsorships, constantly finding ways to tick over, finding our own channels to sell stuff. I was creating T-shirts, art, posters, anything we could do just to pay the bills on the property all the time
Mm-hmm.
with no punters allowed in.
So going forward, like where are you at now, and what's the plans going forward? Obviously, you're doing this independence. What's that?
Yeah.
Is this your venue in Wigan?
No, it's a live venue in Wigan that went through a big refurb in about 4 or 5 months ago, 4 months ago, and they asked me to come and get involved and take over the live side, run the venue, get it busy. That's and just build up a gig calendar there. So things like this are really quite hard when you start somewhere from scratch, especially a new town. So it takes a few months. So we've got that to the position now where from this month I've got gigs in every Friday, Saturday from the end of this month. Really good calendars, having to mix it up with tribute stuff, that sort of thing. So I
Mm-hmm.
still do that. I have my art centre in Manchester where we do rehearsals, the odd thing. We were looking to move that, but at the minute it's still there, and we just I've got the TV show that we do, still putting on gigs. So the biggest thing I do at the minute is the running the gig calendars for music venues. Just and and
Right.
independent.
So I mean, you're just as busy as ever then.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, but summer's always hard though. Summer's quite tricky in our industry, especially nightclubs and music venues. There's not a lot goes on. It's really hard to like get that business during the summer. So this is when you really kick in, from September, end of August to March is like our real peak period. So just making sure I'm quite ahead now in where I need to be. I've booked up till next year with the calendar. So it's now just a case of promoting and throwing the hell out of this stuff and making each thing we've got booked in as good as they can be. So yeah, I'm not as busy as I need as I could be. Could be a bit busier, but yeah, I've got so far ahead. It's good to have that leeway now where I'm not panicking. I've not got nothing in 3 weeks, or I've got nothing on, no show on in 4 weeks at the venue. I've got every gap pretty much filled. So they're really good as a venue. They give me a social media manager. We've got a bar manager now who's started. So a lot of that I used to do. I used to do the bar management, absolutely everything from the venue down. But specifically now I focus on the events management, the DJs, the club nights, and the music side of things. And we've got someone for everything at the company. So it's a pleasure to not have that on my own back for the first time in my life. It's always something I've created. I've always done and always had the weight of expectation, the weight of the finances, the burden of all that on me. But to get to a position where companies are offering you that role is quite good. It's quite an achievement for me. I've just got to prove it, and it's hard to get results instantly in that sort of industry. You have to have people who trust your process. It's just like a football club. You strip out the dead wood, you build from the bottom, and everything can be replaced to be something better, and that takes time. So as you do the first few months, you'll do gigs. Some might work, some might not. So you just get to a point where you repeat the ones that do every few months, while still making sure they can subsidize you to do the grassroots stuff and give other people an opportunity, so you can keep that cycle going and keep seeing who's going to do well, and help them get a kick up.
I think that's us. Then I think we've touched on everything. Obviously, the podcast called Time for Heroes. I don't think I mentioned to you, but hopefully you've listened to some of the episodes. But what I asked for is my guest to pick 4 heroes to come for dinner. 4 heroes to come for dinner. Why you've picked them, and what would you cook them?
Eric Cantona. Maybe one. I bet you Ryan Jarvis said that as well.
I don't know. I didn't have him on this podcast. To be fair, I had him on a different one before I started this, but he would have picked him anyway.
I've Eric Cantona, Liam Gallagher, only because he'd be funny. I've met Sean and Bez, so I wouldn't have them on. John Lennon, Jimi Hendrix, yeah.
Right.
I'll probably cook him pasta because that's all I'm good at, spaghetti bolognese. I'm a bit Italian, so an Italian man can cook a spaghetti.
Yeah. Cantona and Liam Gallagher together, obviously they've done that video together.
Well, that's it. You can see they've got a bit of banter already, so they'd have a bit of a laugh together, and you'd have a bit of football banter with them on the stage, and they both wouldn't give a fuck.
And then, I mean, that's even. I mean, you get Liam Gallagher with John Lennon, so he's probably not even going to bother with Cantona. If John Lennon's there, he's just going to be pestering him all night.
Yeah, John Lennon could just play his tunes in the corner.
It's been an absolute pleasure having you on today. Before we go, obviously, if people want to get in touch with you, where can they get in touch with you?
They can't. I'm only joking. I'm on Facebook. I'm quite private on there though, but I've got the socials. Mancunian Art Centre on Instagram. Obviously me on Facebook, Anton Pell. If you want to email me about any gig shows or anything, it's mancuniapromos@gmail.com. Or for anything in Wigan, it's anton@inthebar.org. Yeah.
Brilliant. I'll post all the links on the description and the show notes. But for coming on the day, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Mancunia TV as well.
Right.
Hashtag Mancunia, you'll get everything going back years.
Yeah. I'll stick all that in the show notes and people can get a hold of you there. But absolute pleasure having you on the day. It's been brilliant talking to you.
And you, Martin. It's been a pleasure.
Yep. I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Time for Heroes podcast. If you would like to get in touch, the best way is on the Facebook page, Time for Heroes podcast, or on Instagram at Time for Heroes podcast, or Twitter at Time for Heroes P1, or drop me an email at timeforheroespod@gmail.com. You'll find Time for Heroes on all podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple, Google and Amazon. Please leave a review where you can. share with others, and more importantly, enjoy.